COVID is such an unpredictable disease. One third of
It's an unpredictable disease. There are some statistics that might make that true for certain demographics and not true for other demographics, but whatever. It's an unpredictable disease. Okay.
disease. One third of children who have been hospitalized with COVID had absolutely no underlying health conditions.
There are two things which, if you have been on this channel for long enough, you're going to pick up right there. One third of all children hospitalized with COVID had absolutely no underlying conditions. Okay. There's a mental game that people play where they throw out a big statistic to scare you. One third. It could have been, by the way, it could have been 80%. It could have been all. But they go with one. She goes with one third. This is the doctor's statement. One third of all children admitted with COVID had absolutely no underlying conditions. Okay, that's a big number. One third is like 33%. Why not mention the number of children that were admitted to the hospital, even from COVID? But let's get to the second part in a second. One third of all children. That's a big number. But she fails to mention the actual number, because the number of children hospitalized with or from or whatever with COVID, it's exceedingly small. So this doctor, what she says might be statistically correct, but it's fundamentally misleading, because the number, one third, but one third of a few hundred, a few thousand of the hundreds of thousands of hospital admissions, the hospital admissions for children, you can check the numbers. It's statistically very minor. I don't want to qualify it. I don't want to say insignificant. It's statistically exceedingly rare. Any children hospitalization from COVID, it happens. But you can check the stats. They're on the government's website. So I won't even qualify them. Go check them. I don't have them out right now. They are very rare. And that's hospitalized, if we go by her wording, which is very interesting wording. That's hospitalized, not from COVID. She didn't say it, so she's not lying.
Disease. One third of children who have been hospitalized with COVID,
I can't get that.
Absolutely no under.
I just wanted to replay the with COVID, hospitalized with COVID. And do you know what we now know? Because the politicians in the States and the doctors in Canada don't trust me. Go listen to Kieran Moore. Who's the other one there? The one who I have issues with, Alberta. Dina Hinshaw. This doctor here says one third, that big number of the children hospitalized with COVID. And we now know, because the doctors and the politicians are specifying it. They're clarifying this. And I tweeted about it at the time. It's time that we distinguish between hospitalized with COVID and hospitalized from COVID. 2 years into the freaking pandemic, this is their revelation. The 101 of what should have been done from day one is to distinguish who's hospitalized with, that means incidentally or not the reason for the admission, versus who's hospitalized from, which means hospitalized from that issue. And we now know, because they've even said it, children hospitalized with broken bones, injuries unrelated to COVID, they get automatically tested when they get into the hospital. And we now know that if they tested positive when they got admitted for another reason, they were counted as a COVID admission. So this doctor, very deceitful in what is being said and what is being omitted. One third of all kids hospitalized without giving you the number of children hospitalized, and hospitalized with COVID, not hospitalized from COVID. Oh, sorry, there was a second part that I wanted to get to of this entire thing, which is nothing short of, I'll say, coercion, spiritual blackmail. Listen to this.
Had absolutely no underlying health conditions. And I think also children have had a really rough 2 years. They've had a lot of disruption to schools, disruption to extracurricular activities, disruption to things like sleepovers and birthday parties. And I think COVID, has really impacted their lives. So the ability to actually going back to some semblance of what they love and enjoy doing is such a huge benefit as well. Thank you so much, Scott.
Do we need a translation of what that means? That is, first of all, she's right. I wouldn't say COVID has impacted the kids' lives. It's certainly been the government response. It's certainly been the government measures. It's certainly been the desecration of what makes humans humans. She's right, though. She's right. Sorry. Justin Trudeau was on his phone while she was saying this. She's certainly right. It has impacted children in devastating manners, and we've talked about this in previous streams. It's devastated them psychologically. We're seeing bad ideations on the increase. We're seeing distress calls on the increase. We're seeing harmful thoughts, harmful actions on the increase. Depression on the increase. Issues related to consuming intoxicants on the increase. We know it's been devastating for the young generation. And congratulations to all those policymakers who've sacrificed a young generation, an entire young generation, to pretend to support the older generation. You didn't even succeed in your goal. You just effectively damaged an entire generation of kids. But this doctor's right. It has been very devastating on children. And they just want to get back to some semblance of normalcy. And the way to do that, by the way, is to be coerced into agreeing to this medical intervention. Just do it and you get your lives back. That's basically what this doctor's saying. You have to listen to the interview in its entirety. It's just shocking